Attention! An artificial object has been discovered on Mars. What is it? A message from aliens or a harbinger of the apocalypse? That's exactly how the headlines would sound in publications loved by conspiracy theorists and people who claim to have seen reptilians. But we're not them. The Hubble channel always tries to get to the bottom of any phenomenon or event, presenting the opinions of all sides and the results of authoritative research. So everyone knows that no human has ever visited any celestial body other than the moon. But traces of humanity are still present both within the solar system and beyond its boundaries. While Elon Musk is preparing a manned expedition to Mars, which is expected to be a real sensation, over many years of astronomical research, quite a few probes have settled on the red planet, and they will never return to Earth. It would seem that all space agencies are aware of this, but sometimes, when they find fragments of spacecraft, they are genuinely surprised at where they came from on the dead surface of Mars. One day, at one site on our dusty neighbor, an artificial object was spotted, a cylinder shining in the sunlight, standing out among the scattered rocks. How did this fragment end up on the red planet? And what other surprises await us? In fact, Mars can be called inhabited in a sense without exaggeration, since traces of our civilization's activity are increasingly being found among its rusty hills. Right now, several active probes are exploring the planet, while the remains of others, long out of order, are buried in the Martian sands. Interestingly, the total mass of such objects currently reaches about 7 tons. Since 1971-16, probes from Earth have visited the red planet with varying degrees of success. Naturally, they couldn't help but leave their mark on the surface of Mars. So, the appearance of the mysterious cylinder also has a perfectly logical explanation. Most likely, it's a casing that fell off the Viking 2 probe during landing. But let's take it one step at a time. The mentioned spacecraft was sent to Mars as part of the American Viking program and operated on the red planet for more than 19 months. The station consisted of an orbiter and a lander, with the former failing 2 years earlier. During its descent on September 3, 1976, Viking 2 jettisoned its ballast and deployed its braking parachutes as usual to make a soft landing in the Utopia Planitia region. This is a rather strange area, 3,300 kilometers in diameter, completely covered with rocks of various sizes. There are practically no craters here, and Utopia is located in the northern hemisphere of Mars. Apparently, it is an ancient impact crater, so enormous that it is difficult to properly identify. Since the landscape here is quite monotonous and bleak, it's not surprising that scientists were drawn to a small cylinder, clearly visible in the photo sent to Earth by the probe. The fact is that the main activity of Viking 2 was collecting soil samples. For this purpose, a sample collector was used, which was usually covered with a special cap when not in operation. But as soon as the device was ready, the cover automatically popped off and hit a nearby rock. Thus, the part remained on Mars, just like Viking 2 itself. Overall, the situation described is standard, since every spacecraft and its structural parts take up permanent residence on the lifeless expanses of the red planet at the moment of landing. Of course, the 30-centimeter-long cover is much too tiny a part to be seen from a satellite. But the Spirit rover, which landed on Mars on January 4, 2004, can definitely be seen. Now the probe is covered by impenetrable bronze sands in the Gusev crater. It could easily be mistaken for an ordinary rock, but there was a time when the rover was working very productively and exceeded the agency's planned active time many times over. Spirit operated until 2010, even though it was expected to last no more than 90 sols, or 92.5 Earth days. Gusev crater is an interesting location, possibly once having been a lake. But Spirit traveled not only along the floor of this hypothetical ancient body of water. As much as it could, it explored all the nearby craters and hills. Unfortunately, the storms here rather quickly and significantly reduced the power generating capacity of the rover's solar panels. How did it manage to recover? Surprisingly, even on Mars, the saying "fight fire with fire" works perfectly. Dust devils, small whirlwinds that periodically sweep across the planet's surface, helped clean the batteries and thus extended the lifespan of the Spirit rover. The last communication session with the Mars rover took place on March 22, 2010. The probe likely died due to battery failure. It had also previously gotten stuck in Martian sand. Spirit was never able to escape from the hellish trap. It is still deep inside a sand dune near a huge formation called Home Plate, buried under a heavy layer of dust. What other spacecraft have met their end on Mars? First of all, we should consider the failed attempts at soft landing on the surface of the red planet, which were made by the following probes. Mars 2. The wreckage is located in the Xanthe region, and it became the first artificial object to reach a planet of the solar system other than Earth. Mars 3. Its remains at the bottom of the Ptolemy crater were discovered by the Mars Orbiter satellite. The Soviet Mars 6, which left a 4-meter crater in the Erythrea Sea after its crash. Mars Polar Lander. It entered the atmosphere of the red planet and disappeared without a trace. To this day, the situation remains a mystery. Deep Space 2, which participated in NASA's New Millennium program, made a fatal hard landing on the red planet. The British Beagle 2, which landed successfully on the surface of Mars, but never made contact. The almost undamaged probe was discovered only 12 years later, in 2015. Schiaparelli, who crashed onto the surface of the red planet after falling from a height of 4 kilometers. But that's not all. Among the craters and mountains of our closest neighbor, you can find spacecraft that, for various reasons, have ceased operating. The veteran among the probes was Opportunity in 2004, which landed in the Eagle crater on the Meridiani Planum. The rover passed by many craters and survived several dust storms, but the last planet-wide whirlwind, the size of North America, which caught the rover in Perseverance Valley, proved fatal. It is assumed that Opportunity froze, since sunlight could not reach its battery through the thick layer of dust. But to this day, the tracks of this remarkable probe can still be seen on Mars. Do you think there is no life on the red planet? Not in the way we understand it, but the steel phoenix is still present here. The rover was launched by NASA in 2007, and a year later it began actively roaming the surface of Mars's polar region. This is the first device to discover water on the seemingly dead surface of our rocky neighbor. Unfortunately, Phoenix remained in the icy embrace of the Martian Arctic, unable to rise from the ashes like in the fairy tale. Is it true that all Mars rovers either turned into wreckage, froze, or got covered in dust? Of course not. At the moment, 5 probes are actively operating on the surface of Mars, and one of them is currently making its first flights in the atmosphere of the red planet. By the way, based on the achievements of this innovative Martian aircraft, a project for a Titan exploration vehicle called Dragonfly is being developed. If you look at a map of Mars or at the planet's surface from satellites, it becomes obvious that our dusty neighbor is not so lonely. Various probes are actively roaming its valleys. Curiosity, Insight, Perseverance, Ingenuity, and Tianwen-1. And some regions jealously preserve the traces of past catastrophes. That's why future colonists who will soon settle the red planet won't feel lonely. Without even realizing it, we are already beginning to inhabit Mars. What do you think the colonizers of Mars will build first? Living modules? Research bases? Aim higher. A nuclear power plant. That's the statement made by the Arsenal Design Bureau, which belongs to Roscosmos. It caused quite a stir. The components of the nuclear power plant are planned to be delivered to Martian orbit using the nuclear tug Zeus after which they will be carefully lowered to the planet's surface by parachute. The location hasn't been chosen yet, but it's likely to be either the Valles Marineris or the Hellas Basin. These locations are mentioned in the plans for placing the first colonist modules. The nuclear power plant on Mars is designed to solve the primary task, to provide the base with energy, without which survival on the red planet is impossible. Does the global project stand a chance of becoming reality? What are the difficulties of colonizing a planet that is similar to Earth and at the same time completely alien to humanity? Will the settlement of Mars become a new cradle for Earth or a suicide mission? Let's try to answer these questions in as much detail as possible. The initiator of colonization, the progressive and unique Elon Musk, doesn't even try to hide the unpleasant truth, stating that most likely the new inhabitants of the red planet will never return to Earth. That's why Mars, or the shuttle that will send colonists there, will become the final resting place for many. Establishing colonies on a lifeless planet is not a relaxing walk or an exciting adventure, but hard work associated with certain hardships. For example, colonists will have to come to terms with the lack of familiar food, numerous physical inconveniences, and deadly dangers. If we compare the colonization of Mars with events that have occurred in the history of human civilization, then perhaps it can be remotely equated to Columbus's discovery of the New World or the conquest of North America. Nevertheless, even now, quite a few of future colonists have expressed their desire to go to Mars by 2025. Elon Musk himself plans to increase the population of Mars by 1 million people by 2050 with the help of an established transportation system, essentially making flights to Mars a routine process. But is everything really as rosy as it seems? We have to pour a little cold water on these optimistic hopes. What are the main dangers that colonists face on their way to Mars and on the surface of the red planet? Not only Elon Musk warns about them, but also experienced astronauts. The first reason was mentioned above. Colonizing Mars is a one-way ticket. Among other factors, Martian conditions will have a negative impact and the human body may behave unpredictably in them. For example, over time, health will be affected by poor nutrition, changes in physical parameters, insomnia, metabolic disorders, and deep depression. It is also important to consider the lack of adequate medical care and the altered effects of familiar medications on the human body, which is quite likely among the hostile wastelands of Mars. Thus, the mortality rate among the first colonists will be high. And what about radiation, you may ask? Isn't it a primary factor in causing cancer and lowering immunity? Of course, this aspect should be given top priority, because with a weak atmosphere, which is nothing like Earth's, and the virtual absence of a magnetic field, a large number of high-energy solar protons reach the surface of Mars. Moreover, according to calculations, the radiation level on the red planet is 2 to 2.5 times higher than on the ISS. These particles fatally alter the structure of DNA, damage molecules, and cause radiation sickness. In principle, the troubles listed are enough to quickly send a group of fragile human beings to the grave. But there is another danger if the colonists do reach Mars. These are the chromic acid salts contained in Martian dust. Their high concentration is deadly to humans. And on top of that, we're planning to build a nuclear power plant. But that's the reality. Without energy, you can't run housing or technical modules. By the way, scientists plan to use technologies developed for the Zeus nuclear space tug in the reactor. It's basically a zero-waste production. But the risk of high mortality is the most obvious obstacle. The other two problems are significant communication delays, which will cause a lot of trouble and malfunctions both during the flight and in the operation of the colony, as well as the inability to predict what will happen to the human body after it leaves Earth's radiation belt. Let's start with interplanetary communication, because without quality communication, it's impossible not only to establish acceptable conditions for the colonists and create the necessary infrastructure, but even to reach the destination in the first place. How long does it take for a signal to reach Mars? If we use radio communication, then during the period when Earth is farthest from the red planet, the interval will be 20 minutes. And during the closest approach, which happens every 780 days, it will decrease to 4 minutes each way. As an alternative to radio signals, the possibility of using an optical channel is being considered. But for now, it's simply impossible to do this directly, especially during the period when the planets are at opposite points in their orbits. To do this, it is necessary to create a relay satellite. By the way, the Roscosmos project also includes the development of a high-speed information transfer portal. I sincerely hope that the astrophysicists will succeed. What will happen when a person leaves the Earth's radiation belt? And here we have nothing reassuring to tell you. The safe zone is considered to be the area between the inner and outer radiation belts. That's about 3 Earth radii. Cosmonauts who spent a short time in the danger zone successfully passed the tests, although they did receive a certain dose of harmful radiation. It goes without saying what awaits future colonists beyond that. Out there, the deadly noose of open space will surround them. First and foremost, the problem will arise on the way to Mars. High-energy rays are capable of damaging only precise equipment and solar panels, which can cause sensors to display incorrect information. On satellites and the ISS, this problem is solved by installing resilient electronics, while probes that regularly pass even through Earth's radiation belts receive about 25 sieverts per year, which is 5 times the fatal dose for a human. That's discouraging information, isn't it? How do scientists plan to overcome these obstacles? The spacecraft must be equipped with radiation-shielded compartments where the astronauts can take shelter during an ionizing radiation event. No windows are planned, unlike during the flight to the moon, because the journey to Mars will take about 6 to 8 months. During this time, there will definitely be solar flares accompanied by large amounts of radiation, not to mention cosmic rays. In the last century, there was research on creating an artificial magnetic field, which would definitely protect astronauts from danger. But calculations showed that for it to be effective, its area of influence would need to be about 100 kilometers in diameter, so creating such a huge electromagnet would be too resource-intensive. As a result, the idea was abandoned. Are these really all the obstacles that the road to Mars and the red planet itself hold in store for humanity? Of course, only the main reasons have been mentioned, any of which could stop a Mars colonization mission at any moment or kill all its participants. For example, scientists recently discovered that microgravity disrupts the function of the jugular vein. This causes thromboembolism or cardiac tamponade and poses a direct threat to life. The solution is to create artificial gravity on the spacecraft, but so far humanity is not technically capable of solving this problem. And yet, what is the status of the nuclear power plant that Roscosmos is promising to the world? Is this project realistic? Theoretically, yes, and if it is implemented effectively, the Martian base will be fully supplied with electricity. But many don't think this is possible. Nevertheless, Roscosmos has signed a contract with the Arsenal Design Bureau for more than $4 billion, and by 2030 promises to prepare Zeus for a 50-month flight. Why does it take so long? The thing is, the tug ship is initially set to stop in lunar orbit and then perform a series of gravity maneuvers using the planets of the solar system. Fine dust causing planet-scale storms and local whirlwinds, significant doses of radiation, extreme temperatures, a shortage of sunlight, catastrophically low atmospheric pressure, and the absence of a magnetic field. Not the best conditions for astronauts to settle on the red planet, let alone for turning Mars into the cradle of humanity. And yet enthusiasts are not discouraged. Projects continue to be developed, with more and more ideas being added. Although for now it resembles a kind of computer simulation with impossible quests. Are none of the future colonists scared by Elon Musk's warnings that they might die during the flight or on Mars itself? It turns out they're not. There are plenty of people eager to go to the red planet, and they're looking forward to a magical adventure that no one on Earth has ever experienced. By the way, Starina, Musk promises that on the innovative BSF ship, along with other participants in the Interplanetary Transport System project, excellent living conditions will be created, including movie theaters, game rooms, and restaurants. So, if you haven't signed up to become a colonist yet, hurry up. What do you think future Martian colonists see as their main task? Of course, it's terraforming and settling a lifeless celestial body. But is it really that barren? The probes tirelessly roaming the red planet, especially Curiosity, prove otherwise. For example, the rover we just mentioned sent a photo showing a clearly visible creature unknown to science, although it is completely petrified. Astronomers immediately named the strange creature, which looks like a grotesque shaggy dragon, Shampoo, and began to puzzle over who it could be. Perhaps pioneers of Mars have a mistaken idea of life on the red planet. What if in reality it is filled with various creatures, hiding for the time being in caves and rock crevices? However, let's get back to Shampoo. At the moment, Curiosity is exploring the Gale impact crater, specifically the area around Mount Sharp, in places where clay soils transition to sulfate rocks. The rover fully lives up to its inquisitive name because it really is very curious. After all, it is curiosity that is responsible for a number of amazing discoveries, which we will mention a little later. According to Life Science, the rover came across Shampoo on July 27, 2021. The object is very small. Its height is only about 16 centimeters, but that does not diminish the importance of the discovery. With a bit of imagination, you can see an iguana or some other exotic creature in the bizarre fragment of Martian rock. This is possible and accessible not only to people suffering from pareidolia and a tendency to form illusory images based on real objects, but also to completely healthy observers. So Shampoo is a stone. What are you? There are 4 main versions of how the strange figure appeared in the rusty Martian dust. Oceanic reef. Such formations appear due to the effects of seawater. It's no wonder Mars is called the planet of past life. It is believed that billions of years ago, vegetation flourished here, vast oceans spread out, endless seas and clear lakes existed. It's symbolic that the rover discovered a mysterious texture at the foot of Mount Sharp, which is located almost in the center of the 154-kilometer Gale crater and rises 5.5 kilometers above it. Its appearance here is attributed to the erosion of sedimentary rocks, that is, their destruction by flowing water. Thus, Shampoo may well represent part of a reef formation created by Martian lightning. Curiosity took a detailed image thanks to the highly sensitive ChemCam camera and the remote RMI microscope. This allows us to examine the structure in detail. Soon, scientists concluded that this could be a fulgurite, a mineral formed as a result of a lightning strike. On Earth, it is quite rare, mostly found in mountainous regions. Astronomers are well aware of Martian thunderstorms, so a certain group of specialists classified Shampoo as a fulgurite. It's interesting that lightning capable of turning sand, quartz, silica, and other rocks into fused glass tubes must have incredible power. After all, the melting point of sand, for example, is over 1,700 degrees Celsius. It's no wonder that similar structures are also left behind after ground-level nuclear explosions. A figurine made of lava. The third version is quite prosaic. The structure discovered at the boundary of clay sulfate soils appeared as a result of past volcanic activity on the red planet. That is, Shampoo is a kind of monument to ancient Martian eras, since Gale Crater is about 3.8 billion years old. A representative of Martian fauna. This is one of the most exotic hypotheses, suggesting that the strange structure is nothing more than a little animal that turned to stone millions of years ago after being struck by lightning, or alternatively, being covered by lava. If that's the case, then it means there was life on Mars, after all? Is it possible that some forms of it have survived to this day? Let's leave the answers to these questions to the perpetually gray-haired scientists, and let's recall what else the Curiosity probe managed to find during its 9 years on Mars. Right now, the probe is moving along the slope of Mount Sharp, continuing to study the local soil in detail. From time to time, it comes across interesting discoveries that abound in Gale Crater. It is noteworthy that almost all the artifacts discovered by the rover are given human characteristics by ordinary people and even by astronomers themselves. Remember pareidolia and the legendary face called the Martian Sphinx, which was photographed by Viking 1 in 1976. As a rule, illusions do not correspond to reality. They are the result of the play of light and shadow, or the angle from which the picture was taken. Nevertheless, Curiosity has made several amazing discoveries. In 2013, attentive observers spotted a structure in one of the images that looked just like a petrified frog. And a year earlier, the Martian probe saw something on the red planet that resembled a fragment of a human finger with a clearly visible fingernail. These aren't the only discoveries. In the Gale Crater, Curiosity at different times discovered a stone rat, a human femur, a German soldier's helmet, a Martian flower, and the remains of an unknown animal, and even something resembling a door handle shining fiercely under the sunlight. And are all these just visual illusions? There are a bit too many of them, don't you think? By the way, on April 3, 2013, Curiosity sent a photo to Earth of a mysterious fire against the backdrop of a mountain ridge rising on the horizon. Scientists attributed the phenomenon to technical reasons. They considered it a glare from the rover's camera. However, everyone is free to draw their own conclusions. To be fair, Curiosity was not the only probe to make similar Martian finds. Other probes did too, for example, Opportunity. As for Shampoo, its discovery adds yet another question to the list of the unexplained. While exploring Gale Crater, the probe accidentally made another discovery. It turned out that the clay soils where the mysterious Martian character was found are much less stable than previously thought. This means that traces of microbial life that may have existed in this location could have been erased from the surface of Mars due to soil activity. So what conclusions can be drawn from observing the images taken by the Martian rover Curiosity? The more advanced the technology becomes, the clearer we can see the surface of the red planet, vividly imagining its landscapes and scenery. And that's not a bad thing. As they say, after all, we're going to live there. But that doesn't make the questions and mysteries any fewer. If anything, it's quite the opposite. We'd like to hear the opinions of our subscribers. What do you think Shampoo really is? The remains of a coral reef? A lava formation? A fragment of fulgurite? Or is it actually the fossilized remains of a living organism? What do you think this creature looks like? An amphibian? A lizard? Or maybe a cat? We're waiting for your opinions in the comments, and don't forget to hit the bell and give us a thumbs up. These days, it's hard to find a celestial body that captures the imagination of scientists and space enthusiasts as much as the dusty, little-studied Mars. You probably already have an idea about the reasons. When the well-known Elon Musk announced his desire to colonize the red planet, it became a truly viral topic that left a noticeable mark on the development of pop culture and flooded the news feeds. There is another reason why Mars sparks genuine intellectual interest in society. It is located close to Earth, and the processes taking place on other celestial bodies can have an impact on our planet. The European, Japanese, and Russian space agencies have constructed a huge number of spacecraft in order to thoroughly study Mars. At the beginning of the century, NASA launched 10 probes for this purpose, and the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, MRO, has been carrying out its mission for 16 years now. And during this time, it has managed to make some interesting discoveries. Make yourself comfortable. We're going to tell you the most amazing facts about Mars. The Mars Orbiter was the 27th probe sent to the red planet. Although this is a NASA project, scientists from other space agencies can freely use the information obtained by this spacecraft. The probe was launched using an Atlas launch vehicle from Cape Canaveral, Florida, on August 12, 2005. The most favorable time was chosen since that was when Mars was close enough to our planet. The object entered the celestial body's orbit on March 10, 2006, that is, 6 months later. From that moment on, the Mars orbiter's mission has never been interrupted. To communicate with Earth, the probe used a directional antenna with a diameter of about 3 meters. The data received is transmitted at a speed of 6 megabits per second. The Mars orbiter had completed its main work by the year 2010. But even now, researchers continue to monitor the probe since it can still be useful by providing important information. The spacecraft has 2 durable solar sails, each of which is about 4.5 meters long. The Martian spacecraft is not the only one in orbit around the red planet. Probes such as Mars Global Surveyor, Mars Express, and Mars Odyssey have also operated in this area. Later, the spacecraft Phoenix, Curiosity, and Insight joined them. The mentioned probes are Mars rovers designed to explore the surface of the red planet. Such activity set an all-time record. Mars is the only object in the solar system that is being studied by so many devices at the same time. But let's get back to the Mars orbiter. NASA has set the following goals for its mission: searching for fossils, traces of water and ice, as well as creating a map of the planet. Astronomers are still troubled by the question of whether life existed on the red planet and whether its emergence is possible in the future. Humanity had been considering creating devices to explore Mars long before Elon Musk spoke about his intentions. For example, NASA announced plans for flights to the red planet back in the 1990s, but there was not enough data to make them a reality. Do you know what causes the greatest concern among engineers and astronomers? Of course, it's a manned flight to Mars. A shuttle carrying people and several tons of cargo will take much longer to reach Mars than a small orbital probe. And the space travelers and settlers, once they reach their destination, will be left to fend for themselves. As we know, water hasn't been found on Mars yet, so people will have to survive among rusty dust in extremely harsh conditions. The problems mentioned are not easy to solve, since transporting water from Earth is difficult and financially costly. The only solution at the moment is to install recycling systems that allow water to be purified and reused. If, for some reason, the first inhabitants of Mars fail to implement this technology, they will die in record time. And once again about the legendary NASA probe. To find out what Mars is like, MRO was equipped with a high-resolution camera of about 1 meter per pixel. This gadget is more advanced than its predecessors. Because the terrain of Mars is significantly different from Earth's, experts can't always clearly differentiate between icy cliffs, dusty outcrops, water ice, and other structures. But during the Mars orbiter mission, the situation improved somewhat. Now scientists have unique technological tools at their disposal, which contribute to new, amazing discoveries. One of the first tasks of the probe was to select a suitable landing site for the Curiosity rover. At that time, astronomers had 12 options for a safe landing of the spacecraft. MRO first examined the Neely foci trough, taking several images of this object, which became evidence that there might have been water in this region at some point. For example, clay minerals and carbonates indicate a river landscape. But the main question remains open for Mars researchers. Are there water flows deep within the planet? It's no secret that Mars appears to us as a dusty, dry, and barren land. However, scientists suggest that millions of years ago the red planet had water, an atmosphere, and maybe even living beings. Thus, the theory that liquid could have settled in the deep layers of Mars seems quite plausible. There is another danger awaiting the first Martian colonists: planet-wide storms. It was the extreme dryness and sandstorms that shaped the landscape of Mars. Sometimes catastrophic dust storms cover the entire surface of the red planet, and the wind speed of these dusty monsters averages 100 kilometers per hour. The sandstorms on Mars are so powerful that they can completely change the appearance of the planet in a short period of time. The orbiter was able to obtain clear evidence of this frightening phenomenon. In one of the images taken on May 28, 2018, Mars appears in a form familiar to people on Earth. But just a month later, on July 1, the planet appears to be literally engulfed by sand dunes. In February 2008, the aforementioned probe took another series of sensational images. At that time, scientists' attention was focused on the red planet's northern polar cap. There was a theory that warm water might be hidden beneath a thick layer of ice. Suddenly, the MRO sensors detected strong ground movements in the location where there was a cliff over 700 meters high. It turned out that an avalanche had come down from its slopes. As a result, the rising cloud of dust reached up to 200 meters, and the soil at the site of the avalanche became loose and layered. What are the possible causes of this event? The fact is that in spring, carbon dioxide contributes to an increase in temperature at the Martian poles, causing the ice to turn into vapor. That is what causes avalanches like this one to occur. Because of the carbon dioxide vapors, unique spider-like patterns are formed. The Martian orbiter recorded this strange phenomenon. The photos are dated February 4, 2009. As you can see, the craters and lines that appeared during the release of vapor look like a colony of giant tarantulas. By the way, the process of sublimation, that is, the transition of ice into a gaseous state, contributes to the formation of most of the Martian landscape. And here, the probe's camera captured something terrifying. A long, narrow whirlwind rises above the surface of the planet. The photo was taken on February 16, 2019. The probe is about 300 kilometers away from the Martian tornado. After a detailed study, it became clear that the height of the whirlwind exceeded 800 meters, which means its size is comparable to the tallest building in the world at the moment, Burj Khalifa in Dubai. What else has been discovered on the red planet? In 2003, not everything was going smoothly for the European Space Agency. As part of the Mars Express and Beagle projects, an orbiter and a lander were sent to the red planet. The first spacecraft managed to reach Mars orbit and begin its mission as planned. But the Beagle 2 lander failed as soon as it approached the planet's surface. The Martian orbiter discovered it 11 years after its crash landing. In the images obtained, it's clearly visible that the robot partially deployed its solar panels before a fatal technical failure occurred. Despite the setbacks, research on Mars continues and is yielding results. In January 2018, using the MRO probe, scientists discovered giant ice veins on the surface of the planet. Thus, water deposits have indeed been found. Currently, there are about 8 such objects in various locations on the planet. In the future, this will greatly help travelers who, at their own risk, go to Mars, as it will solve the water supply problem. The researchers were amazed after studying the ice's composition and structure. It turns out that the water they discovered once fell to the surface as snow. This fact confirms the theory that in the past, Mars was a planet with seas, oceans, a temperate climate, and changing seasons. In other words, almost like Earth. But this recent grand discovery doesn't mean there's nothing left to explore on Mars. 4 ground-based devices are currently studying every meter of the planet, while orbital spacecraft and probes continue searching for valuable artifacts. In February 2021, the Perseverance rover successfully landed on the red planet, and with it arrived the first Martian helicopter. Researchers are now planning to organize the transportation of soil samples from Mars to Earth, which will be an unprecedented event in the history of space exploration. The most interesting things are still ahead, and we will definitely keep you updated on the latest events. What do you think about the discoveries made by the MRO spacecraft, and how do you imagine life on Mars? Would you become one of the settlers?